I mentioned your new title, which comes with a slightly wider scope of coverage. Now that you've added Nvidia, how do you think the political debate surrounding the sale of chips in China is going? Is there a greater risk because of Trump's relationship with the Chinese? Yes, I think it's a bargaining chip because, as everyone knows, there's only one game in town, and that's Nvidia and Godfather v. Gens. This will give them more negotiating power when it comes to chips into China, and it's something that will eventually come to pass. You saw the tariffs, and I think it's had a contained impact on Nvidia. But it's still our belief that this is all setting up for a golden age of AI, not just for nvidia, but for broader tech. Prepare the watch parties, this is going to be an incredible event. In my opinion, Streets is still underestimating where the numbers will go over the next 2 years. They will fight, but in the end, there will be 4 trillion market caps, so we'll stop there. There were some rough edges with Amazon, as we saw on YouTube from an advertising standpoint, but then you look at what we think is just the beginning of the 4th industrial revolution. Take a look at Microsoft's Azure guidelines, what we saw from Google, from Amazon, from Microsoft, what we saw from Paylor from a use case perspective, and I believe that Service is now beginning to see it as well. This is the beginning of what we believe to be $1 trillion in capital gains over the next few years. I'm not saying that there won't be some bumps in the road, but I think this tech bull market is well underway despite some of the macro concerns that we've seen over the past week. And that's really throughout Asia in terms of suppliers. And that's how we've always been able to really get a beat in terms of our view of the supply chain for iPhone. And this start-off units coming out, we call it 80 to 84 million for iPhone 16. And now, we're at about 90 million, possibly higher. This is significant because that's essentially what Apple is telling suppliers about what the demand looks like for the iPhone 16. And we continue to believe that this is the beginning of an AI-driven supercycle for Apple. According to your recent note, you see increased M&A in the IT sector under a Trump administration. Why is that, and what areas are affected? It's been a Goldilocks situation, in my opinion, and regulatory issues have been a major problem. Hubris in valuation, I believe that a tidal wave of M&A is about to occur, particularly in the areas of AI infrastructure software and cybersecurity. I have seen a lot of these in both the public and private markets. It's almost like a tech prom, but nobody is really asking anyone to dance on either side. Alex, I'm going to come over to you. You're an early stage investor, as we mentioned in Pinterest, and Erden, you have of exposure to the private markets following the election of a President Trump or President-elect Trump. I should say, what does that mean for tech companies in the private markets? Before we heard valuations were under some pressure. Does that change now that Trump is taking the White House again? I think it's really bullish for private companies overall. I think there's some in particular, especially the companies in the Elon Musk universe like SpaceX, that it's just extremely bullish for. We've seen what Elon Musk can do under what has essentially been an a White House, with a neutral or a favorable White House. I think it's just going to be incredible what we see, and I think this is across the board in private markets. So Alex, we were talking, off air, you call it, the Musk economy. We have a graphic right here calling it Elon Musk corporate empire. There are many different firms, including the dull ones like XAI, X itself, Tesla, and SpaceX. So when we consider these various companies, what type of value do you think they have? Do we now have a valuation premium under what appears to be a more benevolent administration, of which Elon Musk may be a part? I mean, there's a sense in which you could say that SpaceX and Tesla are so large that they helped Trump win the election. I think that with less regulation and a mindset toward building in the United States, we're going to see the deployment of these potentially extraordinary infrastructures at a much faster pace throughout the nation, but particularly in the redder states that supported him. So Dan, I want to return to you because your new note indicates that you're going to see more M&A. You anticipate seeing more M&A during the Trump administration. But on election night, you were in the studio with us and we were discussing this. We watched some of the stocks rise, like Tesla, and we've covered that territory. But you mentioned that there are other stocks. I believe that everything Karp and the team are doing will be a Paylor, and from a US DoD perspective, we're going to see massive spending there on hyperscalers. You look at Microsoft. Paylor also mentioned Google and Apple as beneficiaries. Why do you think this is going to be a golden era for AI infrastructure? This will truly usher in a new era of AI infrastructure, Amazon and Google. As for Apple, despite some concerns about the tariffs with China, I think this consumer AI revolution is happening in California, which is why I think Tech Trump is getting involved. I believe that everything Alex made some amazing points. The new period of the tech bull market is just getting started, and we're seeing some industries get a boost now that there's a notion that there will be less regulation. Do you think tech will experience the same kind of boost in the long run? The general consensus, I believe, is that Lina Khan will lead the FTC. The regulatory environment will simply change. Khan has been a nightmare for tech, and I believe that her departure will completely alter the landscape. Based on some of Alex's comments, I believe the regulatory environment will be much more favorable for M&A deals. As his AI revolution unfolds, I believe big tech will start to become a little more aggressive when it comes to M&A, particularly in AI. Long term, you may be absolutely correct, but are you not worried about the company's revenue report, which is a plus or minus 2%? This is just because the market wants the company to beat every quarter. And if you look up sandbag special in the dictionary, you'll see this advice, and I believe Street looks as this all plays out, and you start looking at numbers over the next 12 to 18 months. I believe that this is stock that will likely be up even on the conference call, because if you look at everything that they did here in terms of the data center, you could hooper, and we could be talking $578 billion per quarter, which was ultimately just a few billion. It's 9:10 p.m. in this ad party that goes until 4 o'clock a.m. Has the time changed since you came up with that? It was 900 p.m. The godfather of AI, Gens, and Nvidia are still in that Mount Rushmore. And it's definitely starting with Nvidia now that 2/3 and 4th derivatives are playing out. All right, and now we